Okay, so today is the day we're going to start talking about intervals of increasing, decreasing, and relative extrema. So, you've already taken some notes on all of this. I just wanted to walk you through a couple examples to hopefully help you get started with your classwork, your practice. So, we talk about intervals of increasing are like going uphill from left to right on our graph. A constant interval is when it's just flat. You're not going uphill or downhill. And then sometimes we have more than one interval that might increase or decrease. And then decreasing is just going downhill, so to speak, from left to right. So you've already taken notes. I just want to go over a couple examples to try to help you get started since I can't be with you today. So we have these three examples and we want to write down interval notation for increase, decrease, or constant. So looking at this example A right here, we have a cubic looking function, f of x equals x cubed, and from left to right it goes uphill the whole way. So we would say the interval of increase is from negative infinity to positive infinity because it's from start to finish increasing. Never once does it stay constant or decrease. And then we have example B, x cubed minus 3x. So this one is going to increase here. So let's write that one down. So interval of increase is from negative infinity, because it starts down here and goes up to x equals negative 1. We always put a parenthesis because right at negative 1 it's going to change direction. And so for that next interval, at negative 1, it starts to then decrease. So we would say an interval of decrease went from negative 1 to positive 1. But we always use parentheses because at those points it's going to change direction. So like neither one's going to claim that value. Then at 1, it goes back to increasing again. And so we could put and it's also increasing from 1 to infinity. So this one had two intervals of increase and one interval of decrease. And then in example C, this one is a piecewise function. So it has three different functions in one. But we're just looking at the graph to pick out what's happening. So from negative infinity up to x equals 0, it's increasing. So let's write that in green. So it's an increase from negative infinity up to 0. And then it stays constant from x equals 0 to x equals 2. So I'm going to put that in red. So from 0 to 2 it was constant. And then at 2 it starts to decrease. So we would say it's an interval of decrease from 2 to infinity. All right, so that's all you have to do for intervals of increase and decrease. You need to practice your interval notation. Notice those are all parentheses. So keep that in mind when you're practicing and just give those a try on the practice at the bottom. The next thing to show you a couple examples of are relative minimums and maximums. So you found minimums and maximums in Math 2 and even maybe in Math 1 when you were looking at quadratics. If you remember, a quadratic function has the lowest point and we call that a minimum. And then a quadratic function has a highest point and we call that a maximum. These are found using that same process in your calculator. There's no different process to find them. We just call them a relative minimum and a relative maximum because this function would certainly go higher than that point over here and have an absolute max that would keep going. And then this one's going to keep going down. So like those aren't the ultimate maximum value or the ultimate minimum value. It's just that lowest point or highest point in a particular part of our graph. But you find them the same way you found min and max before now. So before you got to Math 3. Okay, so let's just try a couple of those. So these are just looking at your graph. So just looking at example 1, I would say that that looks like it's approximately negative 0.5, let's say positive 0.5. Looks like it's about half and half right there. And then this one, and so that is a relative maximum point because that's the highest point of that area of the graph. And then this point over here is a relative minimum point because it's a low point in this little area of my graph. And this point looks like it's located at 1/2 or 0.5 and negative 0.5. And you can certainly write those with fractions, but I just wrote them as decimals. So then in this graph, we have two relative minimums. That's a relative minimum, and so is this one. And we have one relative maximum. And just from looking at the graph, we're going to make an estimate in this case. So just looking at it, this one looks like it's at negative 3, 0. And this one looks like 3, 0. And the relative maximum is 0, 4. So just picking them out of a graph. And then this third example has a relative minimum here, a relative minimum here, and a relative maximum right there. And again, we're just going to look at these graphs and pick them out. So this one appears to be negative 5, negative 4. And this one appears to be 2, negative 6. And the maximum looks like negative 2, negative 2. Okay, so in the video that you have already watched, I reviewed how to do these in your calculator. There's also this YouTube link that takes you to another teacher. So if you want to hear it from another perspective, you could watch that little video. And then you're just going to practice some of these. So they shouldn't be too terrible, and we can talk about them when I get back to class. And I will be at school later this afternoon if you have questions and you want to swing by. So try to just write the intervals of increase and decrease. These right here are just giving you the function that's in this graph. So you don't need those for anything else. You're just looking at the graph like we did over here on this page. So you're just doing what I did with these examples for these 4 graphs. You don't really need all that stuff that looks kind of complicated. They just wrote it for you. And then you're going to continue practicing. So try these. You're just using your graphing calculator. Again, there was this YouTube link right here, or I showed you last night, or maybe you remember your days from Math 1 and 2, and you can find those in your calculator. And then there's a couple more because I decided that you needed more than just 4 graphs. So there's some more intervals of increase and decrease practice at the bottom. And then at the bottom of everything are your answers. So work with your neighbor, work with your group, and check your answers. And I will be back soon to help you with all of that.